All right, up next, I'll be back in Washington tomorrow. Shannon.
We look forward to your return. Laura, thank you so much. We begin tonight with a Fox News alert. Before a rip-roaring crowd tonight, President Trump hints he may back a federal government shutdown if Democrats in Congress don't give him the money for the border wall he promised. The president saying tonight, quote, we may have to do some pretty drastic things. And breaking tonight, new developments in the Robert Mueller Russia investigation. Why would he refer cases involving high-profile Democrats to federal prosecutors in New York? We'll ask former U.S. Attorney Andrew McCarthy, who used to work in that very New York office. Plus, he weighs in on day one of the Manafort trial. And later, as the president renews the congressional battle over border wall funding, cities in California are reportedly blacklisting and punishing businesses for even bidding on the construction contract for the wall. Fox News at Night investigates. Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. The president tonight giving hearty endorsements to Florida Governor Rick Scott and Congressman Ron DeSantis as he rallies a Florida crowd, talking tough on everything from immigration to Maxine Waters. Kristen Fisher has all the highlights and some of the more interesting moments of the night. Good evening, Kristen.
Hey, Shannon. Well, this was President Trump in full campaign mode, his first rally in Florida this election cycle. He started his speech by praising Congressman Ron DeSantis, who's running for governor, as a brilliant and tough cookie. And this was him really returning the praise after DeSantis described this ad. He released this ad describing himself as a pit bull Trump defender. It also showed him teaching his daughter how to build a wall. And tonight, President Trump said he's willing to do drastic things to get his wall built. You know, for days, he's been threatening to shut down the government unless Congress provides money for the wall. The threats have been especially frustrating for congressional Republicans who are trying to avoid a shutdown right before the midterms. But tonight, President Trump said things that will only make them even more nervous.
We got $1.6 billion, and we've started large portions of the wall, but we're going to need, even the way we negotiate, we're going to need more, and we're going to get more, and we may have to do some pretty drastic things, but we're going to get it.
President Trump also spent a significant portion of tonight's speech defending his trade policies and tariffs. He's been taking heat after China's retaliatory tariffs have hurt U.S. farmers, so much so that his administration announced last week a $12 billion aid package for farmers.
Our farmers are true patriots because China and others have targeted China. Had others, remember this, have targeted our farmers. Not good, not nice. And you know what our farmers are saying? It's okay. We can take it. These are incredible people. We can take it.
But the Koch brothers say farmers want free trade, not government aid. And they just released this blistering ad railing against the president's strategy of using tariffs to leverage new trade deals. The president's now describing the billionaire brothers as a, quote, total joke in real Republican circles. He says their network is highly overrated. I have beaten them at every turn. They want to protect their companies outside the U.S. from being taxed. I'm for America first and the American worker, a puppet for no one. Now, to be clear, the Koch brothers and the president have never really been close, but this was still a major attack against two very powerful Republican megadonors. Now, two more things you need to know about really quick from tonight's rally that are getting just a ton of play on social media. First, President Trump described himself as the most popular person in the history of the Republican Party, except for maybe President Lincoln. And then second, while pushing for voter ID laws, he claimed that Americans need an ID for everything else, including to buy groceries. Now, Shannon, I don't know about you, but I've never been asked for an ID while buying groceries, unless, of course, it includes some alcohol.
Well, of course, then you get carded every time, Kristen, clearly. All right, it was a lot of fun down there in Tampa for the folks who were there rallying tonight. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right, tonight, they're calling him the Koch of the left. Billionaire progressive Tom Steyer is reportedly planning to spend at least $110 million now in 2018. That would be the largest single donor of campaign cash spent mostly, if not exclusively, on Democrats, especially of the far left variety. Steyer's signature cause, of course, is impeaching President Trump. Well, tonight, Steyer's camp says internal polling supports the idea that Democrats should embrace talk of impeachment and that it's not something that will motivate Republicans to get to the ballot box this fall. So what does Fox News politics editor Chris Steyerwalt think about that? Good evening, sir.
Madam.
Okay, so the I word. There's been a lot of talk of Democrats split on this because they're not sure if it's good for them or not. His camp says that their internal polling shows that just 32% of Democrats are uncomfortable with their candidates talking about impeachment. But he says this too, 21% of Republicans, that's the highest percentage of those who are worried about this. So he's saying, listen, it's not going to keep Republicans home. And he adds this, there's all this concern in Washington that impeachment is going to rile up Republicans. But our numbers show the opposite. Time to get past the establishment talking points and get to what's really going to win elections. He thinks that's impeachment.
Well, I think Tom Steyer's running for president, and I don't think Tom Steyer. We always have to remember, what works in one district doesn't work in another district. If you're running for the House in a swing suburban district full of moderate, college-educated, affluent voters, ranting about impeachment, not a good fit. But if you go to another House district where people are liberal, where you have a lot of non-white voters, where the antipathy towards the president runs high, guess what? Impeachment's cool in the gang. So look, Steyer's interests diverge substantially from the rest of his party because what I believe he's doing is using this impeachment stuff as a way to generate a massive list. He's spending a lot of money to generate a list so that when the 2020 cycle begins in earnest, he can run as the Trump of the left, that he will say, and by the way, every indication that we have right now at hand, this is where American politics are going. We're going to go populist nationalist and populist socialist, and everybody else can go pound sand because that's where the two parties are headed.
Well, does he play right into the president's hands if he's out there talking about impeachment? Because a lot of people think that will rile up the GOP to show up. If they think House Democrats take over, the first thing they're going to do if they flip the House is start impeachment. Well,
but also remember, Trump's interests diverge from his party's too. The president, as we've talked about and as I've said before, stands to be advantaged pretty substantially if the Democrats do take the House. And then he, number one, is off the hook for having to do stuff because you heard him talking about we're going to shut it down. We're not going to shut it down. Guess what? You don't have to have those conversations anymore because you don't have to wrangle any more Republican votes. You just say those obstructionist Democrats stink and all they want to do is talk about impeachment. So that helps him for 2020. In terms of what's going to work in 2018, we always come back to the same thing. Not all politics is local. Politics is a nationalized thing, but every district is different and nationalized issues work differently in different districts.
Well, the Wall Street Journal had this very interesting editorial board piece where they talked about the fact that if the president loses the House, not necessarily a bad thing in his mind. They say this, Mr. Trump always needs a foil, and Speaker Nancy Pelosi would be from central political casting. They add on House Democrats would start up the impeachment machinery, and once underway, the momentum would be hard to stop. But as long as he's safe from conviction by the Senate, Mr. Trump might figure he could benefit from a backlash against impeachment the way Bill Clinton did.
Well, now they're smelling what I'm smoking. That's what I've been putting down.
What are you smoking?
That's what I've been putting down for a long time. And that's what a lot of smart people, smarter than me in politics, have been talking about, which is Trump's divergent interests from his own party. The president's thinking about 2020. His team's thinking about 2020. Yes, I'm sure that Mike Pence and others are going to go out and work very hard, and the president's going to go work hard for specific candidates that match up with his ideology and match up with his movement. But in terms of whether it's better or worse for him for the House to go this way or that, I don't think he need. I think he can sleep soundly knowing that even if Democrats take the House as projected, it's not going to hurt him for 2020.
No, maybe not, but may hurt the agenda for getting anything done between now and 2020.
You didn't tell me
those are two different things.
You didn't tell me we wanted results in politics. You didn't tell me we wanted good government.
Some of us would like to see something get done, maybe some bipartisan agreement on something. By the way, as far as smoked things, we're going to stick with smoked meats for you.
Smoked meats, yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Quite so.
That's safe.
Yes.
Thank you, Chris. All right, today, Facebook announced it was removing some fake profiles possibly created by Russian actors. Buried in today's headlines, what those fake profiles were pushing, the resistance and anti-Trump events. Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt joins us now from Los Angeles with more. Hey, Jonathan.
Hey, good evening, Shannon. Facebook did not definitively link the efforts to manipulate U.S. politics to Russia, but the activity it detected very closely mirrors what U.S. intelligence has said were Russian influence efforts during the 2016 presidential election. Facebook says the new attempts were coordinated and, unlike 2016, mostly focused on left-leaning issues such as women's rights, the rights of indigenous peoples, and general resistance to the Trump administration. The social media company removed 32 accounts from Facebook and Instagram, saying in a blog post that, quote, whoever set up these accounts went to much greater lengths to obscure their true identities than the Russian-based internet research agency has in the past. And Facebook executives admit it is a fight without any end in sight.
Security is an arms race, and it's never done. We've made it harder for inauthentic actors to operate on Facebook. Yet we face determined, well-funded adversaries who won't give up and who are constantly changing tactics.
Now, the news caused alarm on Capitol Hill, with some Democrats blaming the president for, in their view, not standing up to President Putin, and the Republican Party as a whole for not adequately funding election security.
And so a lot of people are going to wonder whether their vote was counted in the United States or counted in St. Petersburg.
Now, Twitter, meantime, has announced it is trying to foster, quote, healthy conversation on the platform and is working with a group of academics to analyze what it called echo chambers around political discussions and uncivil discourse. But some Republicans have expressed concern that some of those selected to be part of the group have in the past themselves tweeted anti-Trump sentiments. FoxNews.com found 4 of the 6 on the panel had at some point criticized the president on Twitter. Now, like Facebook, Twitter is also trying to crack down on fake accounts that sow disinformation and discord, removing 70 million fake or suspicious accounts in May and June alone. Shannon.
All right, Jonathan Hunt live in Los Angeles. Thank you very much. And breaking tonight, special counsel Robert Mueller reportedly referring a number of cases to federal prosecutors in New York. Cases that reportedly have to do with several high-profile lobbyists, like President Obama's White House counsel Greg Craig and longtime Democratic lobbyist Tony Podesta. He is the brother of Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign chairman, John Podesta. The special counsel's office declining to comment, but the referrals come to light as Mueller's first trial connected to the Russia probe, but having nothing to do with the 2016 election begins. Former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort knows the makeup of his jury now, and today they got an earful. Fox News contributor, former Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney Andrew McCarthy is here live to weigh in on all of this. Andy, great to see you tonight.
Hi, Shannon.
Okay, so let's talk about what is at stake. I want to talk about what Manafort is facing. 5 counts of filing false individual income tax returns, 4 counts of failure to file reports of foreign bank and financial accounts, 4 counts of bank fraud, and 5 counts of bank fraud conspiracy. That's just in this first case. But what of that is connected at all to the president?
None of it is connected directly to the president. The only connection between the president or President Trump's campaign and this trial is Manafort, and that is to say that he happens to be in this trial and happened for about 4 months to have been a high-ranking member in the Trump campaign. But other than that, the two things have nothing to do with each other. And the theory we've been operating under, Shannon, for these many months is that the reason for pursuing this case against Manafort is to increase the pressure on him to provide whatever information he may have on Russian activity in connection with the 2016 election, and if the Trump campaign had anything to do with that. But as you look at it at this advanced stage, it does seem to be the case that the Mueller campaign, or the Mueller campaign, that's Freudian, right? The Mueller investigation on the matter of what's been called collusion, which, to be clear, is the idea of a conspiracy, an espionage conspiracy between the Kremlin making these efforts against the 2016 election and the Trump campaign. That seems to have gone by the boards. I think even when you look at Mueller's last indictment of the Russian officers, it doesn't leave a lot of room for that kind of conspiracy.
Well, you know, and a lot of folks are looking at this and saying, again, to be clear, this has nothing to do with any potential collusion. Manafort scooped up in this probably because of the brief time he was working on the Trump campaign, because these charges had been leveled, some of them, but, you know, against him before. They never went anywhere until he was part of the Trump campaign. A lot of folks questioning, too, why there hasn't been any kind of deal or negotiation. We don't know if there was behind the scenes, but there isn't one. And a lot of folks speculating today it's because Manafort has nothing to give them. I mean, he is facing potentially hundreds of years in sentencing, but no deal would suggest to a lot of folks that he has nothing to give them on the president or the campaign.
Yeah, I think there's another reason to think that too, Shannon. You know, many months ago in this investigation, Rick Gates, who is Manafort's partner and who Manafort brought with him into the Trump campaign, pled guilty to some of the charges that Manafort and he were facing, which again have nothing to do with the Trump campaign or the 2016 election. It's hard for me to believe, given the closeness that those two guys had working together over the years, that Manafort would have something relevant to the rationale for Mueller's investigation that Gates didn't know about and already have had an opportunity to share with the prosecutors. So again, I think the fact that they've had a witness like Gates had access to him for all these months, coupled with the fact that they have brought charges that don't seem to have anything to do, don't in fact have anything to do with the 2016 election, and the fact that, as you point out, they seem to be not only just winding down these cases, but parsing them out to other U.S. attorneys' offices around the country. Remember, the reason we're supposed to have a special counsel or need a special counsel here is because there's a conflict that the Justice Department can't handle these cases in the normal course, and yet they're now getting these cases.
All right, well, you used to be a part of that office. We'll watch and see what happens to those cases that special counsel isn't reporting on, but we've been told have cropped up there in the Southern District of New York. Quickly, a jury found today 6 men, 6 women, opening arguments. So this trial is off to a start, and we will look forward to you tracking it along with us. About 3 weeks, we expect. Andrew McCarthy, thank you very much.
Thanks, Shannon.
All right, White House Chief of Staff John Kelly has reportedly told staffers he will stay on the job through 2020 at the request of President Trump. The move comes as Kelly marked 1 year at the White House, the anniversary fueling rumors over whether he would stay or go. Kelly replaced Reince Priebus in July of 2017 and was tasked with imposing structure and order on the West Wing. Well, it is official. Today is Justice Anthony Kennedy's last day on the U.S. Supreme Court. But the battle over confirming his replacement in the Senate is just beginning, becoming more partisan as Democrats demand years' worth of documents from Judge Brett Kavanaugh's years in the White House, long before he ever joined the federal bench. The chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee slamming the efforts as a, quote, fishing expedition, accusing the Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer of showboating.
The minority leader could have learned this by simply having a conversation with me instead of putting on a political show in front of TV cameras earlier today.
We'll watch it as it continues to heat up. All right, if you work on the border wall and apply for a construction permit in San Diego, you could be blacklisted. The city is allegedly refusing to grant permits to companies working for or even bidding on the wall. That story's next. Plus, Portland, Oregon's mayor refusing to send in the police as demonstrators protest ICE offices and threaten ICE employees, despite numerous calls for help.
But I do not want the Portland Police Bureau engaged in securing federal property that houses a federal agency with its own federal police force.
All right, the mayor firing back. We've got an update on what he's saying tonight, denying those charges. And Todd Starnes, host of the Todd Starnes Show, actually talked to people in Portland who say anti-ICE protesters threatened to kill them. He's live next. President Trump is preparing for a battle with Congress over funding for his border wall with Mexico. But there's a new problem tonight at the local level. Democrats and activists appear to be stepping up campaigns to blacklist businesses for even bidding on contracts to build the wall. Is it true? Garrett Tenney is looking into it for us tonight. Good evening, Garrett.
Shannon, good evening. Good to be with you. President fighting this battle on both sides here. You know, with Congress, he's struggling to get his own party to get the wall funded. Democrats, meanwhile, are doing everything they can to prevent the wall from being built ever. Now, on a local level, Democrats in a growing number of cities are accused of using discriminatory scare tactics to dissuade businesses from working on that project.
San Diego City Council is against President Trump's wall along the southern border. And if you're a contractor doing any kind of work on the wall, they may be against you too. City officials are currently drafting an ordinance that would not only require contractors competing for city projects to disclose any work they've done on the wall, but any bids they've made or plan to make for work related to the wall. Already, nearly 100 companies based in California have expressed interest in bidding on the border project, which Democratic Councilwoman Barbara Bry criticized in a statement saying Trump's border wall does nothing to promote San Diego's robust economy and our positive international ties with Mexico. But Republican Councilman Chris Cate, who was the only vote against the action, said if the city doesn't like the president's policies, they should talk to Congress instead of punishing local businesses.
I think that going down this path, that's a very bad precedent for the city in terms of what we're trying to do, which is to intimidate, to disparage, to shame, to blacklist employers and employees who are going to be doing work.
Trade groups representing a lot of these businesses are slamming this ordinance as well and accuse Democrats of trying to score political points for their base off the backs of construction workers.
This kind of blacklisting is really just what's unlawful, it's bad policy, and it really creates this opens this Pandora's box of inviting other communities around the country to discriminate against contractors or other businesses because they don't like what they do.
Now, San Diego is expected to pass this ordinance sometime in the next 2 months, but city attorneys there are already warning the city council that it could open them up to lawsuits. And tonight, I'm told that both the Justice Department and the White House are considering lawsuits of their own against San Diego, as well as a host of other cities that are doing these similar policies.
Justice Department spending a lot of time on legal cases out in California. We'll see if this adds to it. Garrett, thank you.
You got it.
All right, a remarkable exchange on Capitol Hill today between Democratic Senator Mazie Hirono and ICE official Matthew Albence. Senator Hirono pressed the ICE official on the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy during a discussion about the now-defunct child separation controversy.
These individuals are there because they have broken a law. There has to be a process.
They have broken a law only as deemed so by the president with his...
No, ma'am. They're there for violation of Title 8 of the Immigration of the U.S. and Nationality Act. Okay, they're U.S.C. 1325. That's illegal entry is both a criminal and civil violation.
Well, these are mainly, my understanding is that under zero tolerance, these are no longer civil proceedings, but in fact, were criminal proceedings.
They were both, they were criminal proceedings when the Border Patrol prosecuted them, but at the conclusion of that process, once the individual came into ICE custody, they would go through administrative proceedings.
I'm confused.
All right, well, ICE agents say Portland's Democratic Mayor Ted Wheeler violated the Constitution by ordering police to stand down while ICE employees were being harassed and threatened by Occupy ICE protesters. They want a meeting with Wheeler for him to apologize and to promise that all Portland citizens will be protected regardless of where they work, or they may see him in court. And tonight we're getting a late-breaking response from the mayor himself. So let's bring in Fox News radio host Todd Starnes. Good to see you tonight, Todd.
Hey, thanks, Shannon.
Okay, so this is what the mayor tweeted back on July 20th when that Occupy ICE Portland thing was still set up. He says, I drove by the demonstration yesterday. It seemed to be very peaceful, and I was pleased to see that. I want to be very clear. I do not want the Portland police to be engaged or sucked into a conflict, particularly from a federal agency that I believe is on the wrong track. Now, a letter from an ICE attorney representing those folks to the mayor says, we understand you have a difference of opinion with the current president of the United States and some of his policies, but we fail to see why targeting the employees of ICE and leaving them vulnerable to violence, harassment, and even death furthers a legitimate government interest. Your policy has created a zone of terror and lawlessness. Tonight, the mayor's denying that, saying it's inaccurate and inflammatory. Now, you talked to some folks there on the ground. What did they tell you?
Yeah, it really was a very violent protest out there right outside of the ICE headquarters in Portland. On my radio show a few days ago, we had the owners of a food truck that was set up directly across the street from the ICE headquarters, the Happy Camper food truck. They actually had to shut down their business, Shannon, and the reason why is they were caught serving ICE agents lunch and breakfast. And as a result, the Abolish ICE protesters targeted the family, the mom and pop family, who ran the food truck. They even threatened to kill their daughter. So we're talking about some very dangerous people here. And Shannon, we should not be surprised. We have seen this time and time again. Oakland, California, for example, where the mayor tipped off really bad, very dangerous illegal aliens that ICE was about to stage a raid. So this is nothing new with the Democrats.
Okay, so we're going to watch as this plays out between the mayor and the attorney representing the ICE folks as they continue to nail down the facts of exactly what did or didn't happen as far as police response. But we heard the mayor saying he didn't want them to get sucked in. So the question is, did they respond when there were calls for help, when there were emergency calls for help, or just nuisance calls? I mean, that's what we're trying to figure out now. So that back and forth continues. But I want to keep you on the West Coast and go a little bit in the same direction. We want to go to Seattle now because we have a case there. And when I first saw this, I thought maybe it was The Onion, but it's a legit story. Apparently, there are folks in Seattle who are on neighborhood poop watch. What's that all about?
What in the name of Mr. Whipple is going on, Shannon? I mean, this is outrageous. Apparently, they have serial poopers in the neighborhood. Instead of tiptoeing through the tulips, apparently someone is squatting in the tulips, and this is a big problem. They're talking about homeless people and drug addicts who are roaming around the neighborhoods and doing horrible things, and people are very disturbed about this. The city can't seem to do anything about it. And what's really ironic here, Shannon, right now the city of Seattle is debating a program that would provide a safe space for people to shoot up with their drugs. This is very similar to what's happening in San Francisco, by the way, where they're spending tens of millions of dollars to clean up human waste off of the sidewalks. They're not doing anything about it in San Francisco either, Shannon. Instead, they're more worried about dirty straws on the sidewalks as opposed to dirty needles and other things.
Yeah, other things. Okay, there was an anonymous Facebook posting by a woman who says that her brother and his wife have been homeless for years in Seattle. It's a gut-wrenching story if true, and she adds this. She says, continuing to allow homelessness is destroying our city and the lives of the homeless themselves. We need to stop enabling their poor choices. Their behavior will continue as long as we allow it. At what point are we going to take the streets of our city back and require people to get the help they desperately need? You know, Seattle is spending a lot of money on this, but a lot of folks, including this woman, say you're enabling, not helping these people. And she worries in the end, it's putting them in an even more dire situation.
Well, that's true. I would caution people, though, if you're on vacation in Seattle, just be sure to watch your step.
That's probably good advice there and elsewhere as we continue to hear the reports. All right, Todd, thank you very much. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Shannon.
All right, the violence and bloodshed so bad in Chicago that citizens say they are hiding their children and that it's time for both the mayor and other officials to step down.
We people are not asking and do not want your backing nor sanctioning. The chant of the people is resign Rahm, resign Rahm, resign Rahm.
Gianno Caldwell, native of Chicago, has been touched personally by the violence. He's speaking out and calling for drastic measures. He is live with us next. Gun violence continues in Chicago, including a shooting at a basketball court that left 3 children wounded. After that shooting, parents in the neighborhood tell local media they're now hiding their children inside. Local activists are planning a march on Thursday, and they are not inviting Democratic Mayor Rahm Emanuel.
We the people are not asking and do not want your backing nor sanctioning. The chant of the people is resign Rahm, resign Rahm, resign Rahm.
Fox News political analyst Gianno Caldwell's from Chicago, and he has talked about this many times, including with us. He joins us now live. Gianno, great to have you back. Has anything improved since we last talked?
No, I don't think it has. I think people feel a bit more anxiety and angst when it comes to their safety in Chicago. As noted, there's now parents that are teaching their kids how to survive what the perception and the fear that people feel is almost like a war-torn city. I wrote in my piece in an op-ed that was released on foxnews.com this week a comment that Kanye West used in a song called Murder to Excellence. He, in talking about the state of Chicago, said, "Is it genocide?" And I got to tell you, it feels like it is. When I look at the numbers, when I see the Yale released a study in 2015 saying on average for every 100,000 residents, there's 1 white person shot, 28 Hispanic people shot, and 113 African American shot. And there's almost 3 million people in the city of Chicago. This is beyond troubling. The mayor has failed at every level. The governor of Illinois has said this as well. And I mean, it's frustrating for everyone, including me and my family, who've lived through tragedy after tragedy, seeing friends and families be shot and murdered in Chicago.
I mean, literally in their arms. I mean, your brother, you've told the story of him losing his best friend in one of these shootings. It's interesting. We talked about the parents who are saying they don't even want to walk down the streets with their kids. They tell them to stay inside, to stay there for their own safety. HotAir.com says this. Residents say they don't see enough police walking the beat as they did in the old days. They want more of a police presence. That's a tall order when the city government spends more time blaming the cops than they do supporting them. Now, to this point, the city of Chicago and the Illinois Attorney General have entered into a consent decree, which essentially is going to put some new rules and policies. They're attempting to do that with the police there. It's got to be approved by a federal judge. This is what the president of the Fraternal Order Police says about what they're proposing. He says, I think they're putting our officers in a safety problem immediately. I think that you're going to see that officers may be hesitant, and we're not going to let our officers be injured or killed simply for a policy that makes other people feel good. I mean, it sounds like police officers, folks want more of them on the streets. They want to be out there. They're already doing an amazing thing by agreeing to this job. And yet you have other people who are apparently questioning them and making it difficult for them to make their own judgments about what to do in a split-second situation.
And I would say that that's factual. I think after Rahm Emanuel was found out that he withheld the Laquan McDonald tape, which, if for those that may not recall, Laquan McDonald was a scenario where a young man who didn't have a weapon was running away from the police, and multiple police officers shot him multiple times. And this was something that if the black community or the communities of many communities in Chicago had became aware of, that Rahm had withheld the tape, he might not have won re-election. So that's exactly where this consent decree came from. The Lisa Madigan, the Attorney General, sued City of Chicago, and here's where we are. I think at this particular point, considering the failure, the derelict, Rahm Emanuel being derelict in his duties to protect the citizens of Chicago, I believe personally it's time for some federal intervention, and I've called for in my op-ed President Trump to intervene, as he said many other times. He said believe in 2017, if Chicago doesn't fix the carnage, I'll send the feds. He's mentioned Chicago on a number of other occasions, and I think there's some real things that we can do in terms of him ordering the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, as well as the FBI Director, to come up with a comprehensive plan on how to keep Chicagoans safe, in addition to funding programs that provide positive ramifications for at-risk youth. There's a number of things that can be done, and considering the fact that Rahm Emanuel's focus has recently been on the sanctuary status, there's some need for some new leadership that's going to take care of all the citizens of Chicago and not just those that can get them reelected.
Well, we know you've reached out to the White House and the president, your op-ed and your appearances here and elsewhere. We'll see if he gets your message. Deanna Caldwell, thank you very much.
Thank you. I believe he's getting them. Thank you.
All right, 7 men suspected of attempting to rob a Texas jewelry store with guns blazing turned out to be illegally here from Mexico. As charges against them mount new questions about how they got here and whether they will be deported right away. Plus, a judge stops the release of blueprints for 3D guns. There is a mountain of misinformation about how they work and just how long they've actually been available. Stay tuned. This is a Fox News alert breaking tonight in the debate over 3D printed guns. It's a story that's caught the attention of the White House, the NRA, state attorneys general, and much more ahead of a midnight deadline tonight. Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt is back with the very latest developments. Jonathan.
Shannon, good evening again. Midnight tonight was indeed the deadline for a decision, and this legal fight went down to the wire. But the court decision has now been made, and for now at least, gun rights activist Cody Wilson and his company, Texas-based Defense Distributed, will not be allowed to release the blueprints and instructions for how to make untraceable, undetectable 3D printed plastic guns, much to the relief of the 8 attorneys general who had filed the lawsuit seeking a restraining order from U.S. District Judge Robert Lasnik.
Complete, total victory. Everything we asked for, we got from Judge Lasnik. So first, I want to thank Judge Lasnik on such a tight timeline to hear this case, to hear the oral argument, to ask thoughtful questions of all sides, and to issue the decision they did.
Now, Cody Wilson had sued for the right to publish the designs, and in late June, the Trump administration had given him the go-ahead, much to the horror of Democrats who accused the president of endangering American lives.
The blood's going to be on his hands. It's that simple and stark. And he can tweet from now until the end of his administration. But the hard reality is that he can stop needless death and injury in America.
Now, the NRA and the White House claim the ability to publish the 3D gun designs meant little, given that making them is already illegal, with the White House saying, quote, "The administration supports this nearly 2-decade-old law. We will continue to look at all options available to us to do what is necessary to protect Americans while also supporting the First and Second Amendments." And the attorney for Cody Wilson said of the court order tonight, quote, "We are disappointed in this ruling, which will result in a global injunction on the freedom of speech." Safe to say, Shannon, the last shots have not yet been fired in this legal fight over 3D printed guns. Shannon?
Yeah, feels like it's just beginning. All right, Jonathan Hunt, thank you for double duty tonight.
Sure.
All right, critics of open borders and unrestricted illegal immigration are pointing to a case in McAllen, Texas tonight involving an attempted armed robbery at a crowded mall and 7 suspects who were all illegal immigrants. National correspondent William Longinus picks up the story from there.
Saturday, McAllen, Texas. 7 illegal immigrants caught on surveillance video rush inside a jewelry store. One holds a weapon, while others grab watches and rings. Moments later, a security guard storms in, gun drawn. An armed citizen in a red shirt backs him up till police arrive.
When I heard that everyone was fine and they were caught, I was already relieved.
Most illegal immigrants enter the U.S. looking for a better life, not a life of crime. But incidents like this tell a story statistics do not.
Illegal immigrants are about half as likely as native-born Americans to be incarcerated in the United States.
Studies show illegal immigrants commit less crime than citizens, though some state prisons say otherwise.
In any population that large, you're going to have some murderers, some robbers, some rapists, and some of them are going to be deported and some of them are going to try to come back.
You do have the right to speak to your attorney.
All 7 suspects are Mexican nationals with prior deportations. At least one, sources say, has a prior felony conviction for robbery. The administration today vowed to continue the president's enforcement first strategy.
The current policy is to rigorously enforce the immigration laws.
And President Trump is keeping the pressure on Congress.
If we don't get border security, after many, many years of talk within the United States, I would have no problem doing a shutdown.
So the president wants $5 billion for border security next year and frequently uses anecdotes like the robbery to support his case. Prosecutors have charged the 7 with aggravated robbery, and each has requested a public defender so U.S. taxpayers can foot their bill. Shannon?
All right, William Longinus for us tonight. Thank you. Time now for your Real News Roundup. New legal trouble potentially tonight for CBS. Executives are facing new allegations they may have destroyed evidence in the battle with top shareholder Shari Redstone over an attempt to gain corporate control of the company. According to an emergency filing in court, CBS CEO Les Moonves and other CBS executives are accused of using self-erasing messaging technologies. CBS officials say the use of the technology was implemented following the Sony hack and is not being used for nefarious purposes. All that as Moonves faces an outside investigation into allegations of sexual harassment. A gun law signed by Florida Republican Governor Rick Scott reportedly resulting in hundreds of guns being confiscated. 467 Floridians have reportedly been ordered to give up their guns since Scott signed the risk protection order in the wake of the deadly Parkland school shooting. The so-called red flag law allows the state to take guns from their owners if a judge deems them to be a threat to themselves or others. An Oregon chapter of a top public employee union is agreeing to pay about $3,000 to a public employee after she sued them over attacks they made on her husband, a Republican state lawmaker. The SEIU spent more than $50,000 campaigning against that employee's husband, including flyers, suggesting he discriminated against disabled people despite the fact that they have a daughter who is disabled. Well, more than 200 leads, still no answers about missing Iowa College student Molly Tibbetts, gone now for 13 days. We've got a report with the latest details up next.